It's from a letter to Congress released today by the nonprofit group Whistleblower Aid about a whistleblower who's just come forward named Daniel Berulis. Quote, Mr. Berulis is coming forward today because of his concern that recent activity by members of Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, have resulted in a significant cybersecurity breach that likely has and continues to expose our government to foreign intelligence and our nation's adversaries. This declaration details Doge activity within the National Labor Relations Board, the exfiltration of data from NLRB systems, and concerningly, near real-time access by users in Russia. Notably, within minutes of Doge personnel creating user accounts in NLRB systems, on multiple occasions, someone or something within Russia attempted to log in using all of the valid credentials, usernames and passwords. This, combined with verifiable data being systematically exfiltrated to unknown servers within the United States and perhaps abroad, merits investigation.
In our politics lead, a whistleblower is coming forward with claims that Doge not only accessed data from his agency, but also took a substantial amount of sensitive data with them. According to a disclosure shared with Congress, quote, around 10 gigabytes of data, or quote, the equivalent of a full stack of encyclopedias worth if someone printed these files as hard copy documents, unquote. Now, that data came from the National Labor Relations Board. That's an independent federal agency that investigates allegedly unfair labor practices by private sector employers and unions and collects and stores sensitive and confidential information in the process. It's the type of information that Democratic Senator Chris Murphy asked the head of the National Labor Relations Board if she would protect from Elon Musk during her, it asked the Secretary of Labor, rather, if she would protect this data from Elon.
As you can see here, this data breach is very serious. And we're going to be taking a look and being educated by Mr. Daniel Berulis and his lawyer, Andrew Bakaj, on what happened with this data breach. And it supposedly was Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, ran by Elon Musk. And it seems as though there was a breach and there was a lot of data taken from that. That's our American taxpayer data taken from there, and somehow Russians are involved. Some Russian IP addresses were detected as taking some of this, some gigabytes worth of data. So we're going to see what this whistleblower and his lawyer has to say about this, and we're going to be learning from them while they're on Rachel Maddow's show and Jake Tapper's show. So we're going to go ahead on and get started with this one.
It's from a letter to Congress released today by the nonprofit group Whistleblower Aid about a whistleblower who's just come forward named Daniel Berulis. Quote, Mr. Berulis is coming forward today because of his concern that recent activity by members of Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, have resulted in a significant cybersecurity breach that likely has and continues to expose our government to foreign intelligence and our nation's adversaries. This declaration details Doge activity within the National Labor Relations Board, the exfiltration of data from NLRB systems, and concerningly, near real-time access by users in Russia. Notably, within minutes of Doge personnel creating user accounts in NLRB systems, on multiple occasions, someone or something within Russia attempted to log in using all of the valid credentials, usernames and passwords. This, combined with verifiable data being systematically exfiltrated to unknown servers within the United States and perhaps abroad, merits investigation. Joining us now is NLRB whistleblower Daniel Berulis and his attorney, Andrew Bakaj. Mr. Berulis, Mr. Bakaj, I really appreciate you being here. I'm sure this is a stressful time for both of you and a stressful experience being on national TV talking about it. I really appreciate your trust to do this.
Thank you for having us on.
So, Mr. Berulis, let me ask you about some of the pushback that we've had here. NLRB said in a statement that Doge didn't access National Labor Relations Board data. They said that Doge never had access specifically even to the building in which National Labor Relations Board is housed. What's your response to that statement from the agency? We're having a hard time sort of making heads or tails of it.
I totally get that. I think it's an initial knee-jerk reaction. The truth is it was almost immediate after they got notice of this. there's not going to be corroborating evidence like I presented that they're going to be able to present to back up these. What I did is I tried to prove the negatives along the way, and I compartmentalized the investigation. So as part of this, I definitely was careful to not say anything that wasn't true or include anything that I couldn't back up with secondary sources. And so I think if we can get the right people in here for transparency, I would absolutely love it if I was wrong about this. It's just we need other people we need real forensic analysis, and that's what we were trying to do with the cert.
And that goes back to what we requested, which is an independent investigation, because again, Dan provided not only what he saw, but the forensic details to back up his concerns. And so part and parcel of an investigation is to, of course, speak to others, and there will be other individuals who will be able to corroborate what Dan saw, because they saw them themselves.
Dan, in terms of what you witnessed, you presented this screenshot showing what appears to be a large surge in data leaving the agency. For people who aren't familiar with what the NLRB does and what kind of data that might be, what is the sensitivity of the kinds of data that's housed in NLRB systems? What worries you about that potentially being exfiltrated to parts unknown?
Sure, absolutely. So what we're looking at there in the picture is the outgoing data out of from our internal network. There's also a correlating spike in the outgoing data from the database that houses our internal case data. So things like proprietary company secrets, union organizer names, private affidavits of unfair labor practice complainants. These are things that traditionally would be kept in a judicial system behind lock and key. And not anything to do with efficiency, for sure.
Why would the security systems that protect the secrecy and the sort of sanctity of that data ever be disabled? Is there a sort of good faith reason that somebody would allow insecure mobile devices to access that data or remove multi-factor authentication for people who are trying to access those data? Those security systems being disabled within NLRB's systems, to me, just seem completely inexplicable. At least they don't seem like the sort of thing that could be done in a good faith sort of way. But am I missing something? Is that something that IT professionals do for other reasons?
No, you're absolutely correct. They're considered indicators of compromise. And the people that I work with are very meticulous. They're borderline OCD, and these aren't mistakes that I've ever seen them make before. So for all these controls to be off, in the small amount of time, it doesn't speak to it being accidental.
Once you and your colleagues decided, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Bakaj.
No, and one of the things I also want to point out to you, because you did an outstanding job, Rachel, in going over exactly how foreign intelligence likely was able to try and access NLRB databases. This is more than just the NLRB. Dan is here because he's been brave enough to come forward with what he saw, what he witnessed, what he can actually establish through forensic data. We have heard from others there are many people like Dan, but who are afraid to come forward. And we've also heard that in addition to how the systems were being treated by Doge within NLRB, what we've also seen is that these systems were also connected to Starlink. Now, why is Starlink critical? Starlink is critical because the information that flows through Starlink goes directly to Russia. What has happened was back in last year, the Department of Defense has stopped using Starlink in any way, shape, or form because that is viewed as a direct pipeline there. And this is something that is also being seen in other agencies, not just NLRB. The other thing that's really concerning is that, and I don't want to say that this was done intentionally, it could be done unintentionally by accident by those who are working within Doge, which is they have allowed certain specific critical infrastructure in other agencies, such as within the Department of Energy, where you have nuclear regulatory agencies overseeing our nuclear stockpile, et cetera, where that has been now opened to the open internet. So critical infrastructure throughout the country has unfortunately been provided access to the open internet, which means our foreign adversaries like Russia can and may have access to all of that. So the way that I would frame this is that what Dan is seeing and what others like Dan are seeing within our government is that this is like Chernobyl and them seeing the control systems light up post-meltdown. This is where we are.
Yeah.
Let me be clear on the issue of foreign access to NLRB systems. What you saw, Dan, is a Russian IP address. So you can spoof an IP address. It could be somebody pretending to be in Russia and not actually being there. Attempting to log into these systems in very close proximity to the time that Doge was creating, Doge, as you say, was creating accounts in order to access these systems. But there's no proof of who that was or if, in fact, that was, you know, a foreign intelligence service or even a foreign actor, right? It was just a Russian IP address, right?
So there are some caveats, but to the effect, yes, it was the same geolocation multiple times, and it's just one of the small factors that adds up to the bigger picture. You know, you have one of these, you consider it maybe a fluke, but you have 40 or 50 of these indicators, and the bigger picture becomes clear.
Let me ask you about the threat that you received, Dan. You and your colleagues at NLRB had decided to pursue a formal investigation into what you regarded as a breach of the data and systems at your agency. You prepared a request to CISA at the Department of Homeland Security to help you with that investigation. And then you received a threat at your home where you live?
Where I hadn't lived for too long either. I've only been there 2 months. The only place that I've actually updated that address is in the OPM database for my payroll with the government. That's really, I haven't even updated my bank card yet. So
can you tell us about the character of the threat?
I think it was vague enough to not be. Can I just?
Yeah, I can jump in there for Dan because this is actually quite difficult for him to talk about because it is quite personal. So this is a letter who somebody had drafted. And within the letter, there was specific information about Dan that can only be obtained through, for example, internal databases within the government. Because it's not anything, and we've had individuals conduct an investigation. We've had our own investigative team conduct an investigation to see whether or not any of this is really easily accessible online, and it's not. And so there is information that very few individuals would know. It could be something that was submitted to the government on an SF-86, a security clearance background investigation, et cetera. And the fact that he's only been at this residence for 2 months or less. We have that. We have the fact that somebody literally figured out where he lives, taped this note to his door, and flew a drone above him while he was walking his dog. I mean, I've only seen this once or twice in the years where I've represented whistleblowers or conducted investigations like this. When I saw this made me pause and get concerned about Dan and what's going on. And this is pure and simple witness and whistleblower intimidation because this came forward before we even filed anything with the government, which means that somebody was monitoring his use of systems within the government, which for me is, you know, it is an indicator as to where this is coming from. And the funny thing is that this was clearly done to intimidate him, to stop him from coming forward, but it didn't. And the reason why Dan came forward is not just to ensure that the truth comes out, but that other folks like him have the courage to come forward, because a lot of people believe or think that something is amiss, that this is happening within our agencies and within our government. But guess what? It is. And we have the evidence to establish that. And we need other people to come forward because you know what? And one of my colleagues has said this once in the past, and it's so true. Courage is contagious. And this is in part why Dan is here and speaking with you today, not behind a silhouette or a screen, but directly to you today and to everybody, so that way we can hear what's actually happening.
I agree. It's really to the point of where I feel like there's a culture of fear in the government right now that we're trying to combat. And by coming forward and standing up, even with this happening, I feel like fear and apathy are the death of democracy. And we can kind of, you know, fight that if somebody's able to just show that they can do this and it's okay. I have plenty of other friends at other agencies that are terrified right now to come forward with what they have. And my hope is that they see this and they're able to do that now.
One of the things that Dan has told me is that he hopes that he's wrong.
Absolutely.
This is not something that we want to be the case. But we've been able to stress test this not just through Dan's own research and investigation, but through subject matter experts with whom we've worked in preparing this disclosure. And so what we're asking for is an investigation, somebody to look at this and take this seriously. Because you know what? there's personal identifiable information affecting American citizens that's flying out from the United States government, likely to Russia. But if that's not enough, then it's our national security. I mean, at some point, we all have to collectively wake up and say no and rebuild. Because unfortunately, I'm concerned that we're in a place where we can't undo what has been done, but we can know what happened, who did something wrong, hold people accountable, even if it's, at some point in time in the future, and rebuild, because that's where we need to be.
And again, the request here is for an independent investigation by law enforcement and Congress. National Labor Relations Board whistleblower Daniel Berulis and attorney Andrew Bakaj. Mr. Berulis, as I said at the outset, I know this is a very stressful time, and this is a stressful thing, including being on television with me right now. I thank you for your trust in doing it. Thank you for your bravery. Thank you both for helping us understand.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your coverage.
All right.
Yes.
All right. More.
This is a very serious data breach. Who knows where this information has gone already? With these Russian-style tactics being used to intimidate this one worker, imagine what's going on with the rest of them. This Department of Government Efficiency that Elon Musk has been the hand to run, this is the type of stuff that we all feared that he was after. And who knows what he's doing with it. Anything dealing with Russia, this IP address with Russia, there can't be any good that's going to come out of that. So we hope that we can get an independent investigation, but other than that, who are you going to go to? Because everything is under Trump now. I mean, this is all stemming from giving him immunity from the Supreme Court on down to him beating all of these different charges that he was under investigation for, with the top secret documents and all of this different stuff. So this is a lawless administration running amok, and we just have no idea why this information was sought out and where it's going already. Who knows what the damage is, but we're going to finally see it eventually. One day we're going to know what Elon Musk and Doge was up to when they broke into this system and stole this information. We'll see.
News ahead here tonight. Stay with us.
In our politics lead, a whistleblower is coming forward with claims that Doge not only accessed data from his agency, but also took a substantial amount of sensitive data with them. According to a disclosure shared with Congress, quote, around 10 gigabytes of data, or quote, the equivalent of a full stack of encyclopedias worth if someone printed these files as hard copy documents, unquote. Now, that data came from the National Labor Relations Board. That's an independent federal agency that investigates allegedly unfair labor practices by private sector employers and unions and collects and stores sensitive and confidential information in the process. It's the type of information that Democratic Senator Chris Murphy asked the head of the National Labor Relations Board if she would protect from Elon Musk during her, asked the Secretary of Labor, rather, if she would protect this data from Elon Musk during her confirmation hearing in mid-February.
And this is an individual who owns companies that have existing investigations. Mm-hmm. He has a direct interest in getting information about the seriousness of those investigations. He has interest in getting information about investigations against his competitors.
So that's the reason why it should be protected, among others. Joining us now, Daniel Berulis. He's the whistleblower that we were talking about, as well as his attorney, Andrew Bakaj. And Daniel, you're fairly new to this role. This is your first TV interview as a whistleblower. And also, you're fairly new to the role at the National Labor Relations Board. You're just under a year with the agency. How did you first deduce that there was a problem?
So I spent a lot of time in the private sector, and you start to see these indicators of compromise sometimes, and they kind of raise red flags. And so when you start seeing those, you put together the puzzle, and more likely than not, that's how you flesh out a breach. And I saw those same indicators in my agency and started raising the flag.
So in your complaint that you shared with Congress, you include this screenshot we're going to show. It shows a large spike in data leaving the National Labor Relations Board. You say that's extremely unusual because data almost never directly leaves the databases. How do you know what was being removed, and is it possible you saw something that has a plausible explanation behind it?
I definitely would prefer that, actually. I've tried to prove the negatives multiple times. It correlates directly with data that was exiting the database at the same time. There's a lot of corroborating evidence that points to it. That was the first thing I tried to do, is just rule out every other solution before I went this route.
We reached out to the White House about your claims, which obviously were made public when you came forward and went to Congress. You got this statement, quote, "It is months-old news that President Trump signed an executive order to hire Doge employees at agencies and coordinate data sharing. Their highly qualified team has been extremely public and transparent in its efforts to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse across the executive branch, including the National Labor Relations Board," unquote. What's your response to that?
So I believe that if that was true, we would have access to the code that they're running. We would be able to see these things that they're hiding. I don't believe that there's transparency, and that's all I'm asking for here.
And Andrew, give us the view, the 30,000-foot view here, because obviously this data could be beneficial to others, either corporations or even a foreign actor with malign intention. How do you know that?
So we know that because the information that the National Labor Relations Board looks at are basically corporate documents and things that involve unions. So there's a lot of sensitive corporate information that is included within this, which, yes, could be of interest to Elon Musk, but at the same time, they're of interest to our foreign adversaries. I'd like to step back for a moment and talk about what the larger implication is here. So this is happening at the NLRB, at the National Labor Relations Board. But Dan is brave enough to come forward, and there are others within the government that I've talked to and that we've talked to who have seen something identical as this. There are two data points that I want to point out that should give everybody pause. The first thing, what Dan witnessed, was that within 15 minutes of Doge employees creating user accounts, i.e. usernames and passwords, within 15 minutes of those accounts being created, somebody or something from Russia tried to log in with the right username and right passwords, that is to say, the right credentials. And that happened over 20 times. The second data point, which is really critical, is that Doge has also been using Starlink as a means to exfiltrate data. What that means is that, from our understanding, that Russia has a direct pipeline of information through Starlink, which means that anything going through Starlink is going to Russia. We also know that this is not unique to the NLRB. This is happening government-wide. And then the other thing that I wanted to flag for everybody is that right now, and I don't want to say that this is intentional, it could very well have been a mistake, is that critical infrastructure databases in many government agencies, as we understand it, have been exposed to the open internet, which includes critical databases at the Department of Energy, which includes a lot of our nuclear regulatory agency material. So right now, the real concern is that this is not unlike Chernobyl and all of the control panels lighting up after the meltdown. This is serious, and I just want to commend Dan for coming forward to bring this to everybody's attention, because this really is the tip of the iceberg.
Andrew, how can you say, how do you know that somebody was logging in from Russia in that 15-minute period?
Dan actually saw that happen.
Yeah, there's logs and records we keep that show, they geotag based on latitude, longitude, where login's coming from. And we saw blocked ones from Russia using that account.
You also told our producer that shortly after sharing your concerns about a potential breach that you received a threat at your home, including photographs. What did the photographs show? Was there a message?
The message was clear, although poorly constructed. It was to stop looking, stop reporting. The pictures were of me walking my dog from above.
Basically,
a satellite photo?
No, it was actually taken by a drone. Yeah. What's really disturbing about all of this is that we had somebody literally either themselves or have somebody go to Dan's home and tape a threatening note, a menacing note, that included a lot of personal information. There was a clear reference to his whistleblowing activities ahead of our filing, and with an image basically threatening him as he's walking his dog. That image was taken via drone. We've taken this very seriously, And by the way, I've done this for a number of years professionally, and this is something that really takes me aback. And it's only something that I've seen maybe once or twice in handling whistleblower claims, both public and private sector.
All right. Daniel Berulis and Andrew Bakaj, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is really, really serious. For this guy to have them watching him at his house, flying a drone above him this early on into what they were doing, tells you that this has Russia written all over it. Why would Russia have a direct pipeline to data coming out of Starlink, an American company, an American data and internet company, satellite company? This just makes no sense to me. There's something seriously nefarious going on with this situation. They are after something. They are trying to bully this guy from coming out and giving the information that he has found. 20 gigabytes of data is a lot of data. Just to give you a scale of it, 1,024 kilobytes is a megabyte. One of your pictures in your phone can be from like 3 megabytes on up to about 12 megabytes. So it's going to take 1,024 megabytes to reach 1 gigabyte. So they're saying that this data breach contained about 20 gigabytes of data. That's personal data from the American taxpayers that these people have gotten their hands on. Who knows what and why they needed this data and why they would go to such lengths to get to it and to steal it, but it's done. So, like I always say on these videos, we're going to need to get that house and send it back so we can do some investigations into these type of serious crimes that's going on with this administration, because they're just running amok with all of our data, doing any and everything that they want to do. So I thank you guys for tuning in again. Now, like I always say, give me a voice, help me get a voice, and I'm going to do my best to find some information and get it out to you as best I can. So once again, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one. I ask you guys to like and subscribe and share with your friends.